So, what do we know? We know the easiest path to getting a job on Wall Street is by having a family member or friend walk you through the front door. We know the next best chance you have is going to a target school where you get the best grades and have the best resume, which leads to a great internship and culminates into a full time offer. Everyone else, raise your glass. You're part of the 200 to 1 club. And to break out from that club, we know it'll take determination, hard work, a solid resume, perfect cover letter, great interviews, some edge, and luck. Hopefully, good luck. Now, I want you to look in the mirror and be completely honest to yourself. Where are you on the spectrum of the competition? The only thing that matters when getting a job is knowing where the standard is and knowing your competition. Do you recognize these people? LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan. These are three of the best basketball players over the last 30 years. Besides their greatness, what do they have in common? They're ferocious competitors. They're known to arrive first to the gym for practice and leave hours later than everyone else. They invest in training staffs, coaches, chefs, and people who push them to be better. After winning championships, these great players may take just one day off before they start training to win their next championship. History reveals that the greatest athletes in the world are always the ones that prepare, practice, and work the hardest. I love this quote about athletes. Bottom line, the ultimate measure of a competitor is determined by what you can't measure, the intangibles. Anyone can measure height, weight, and speed, but you can't measure intellect, commitment, persistence, and the instinctive ability to convert talent into results. Success depends on the strength of only one muscle, the one that beats in your chest. This also translates to great students. Why am I telling you this? Whenever I talk to students about getting into Wall Street, most cringe when I remind them that the very same students they lost out to in high school for the best grades, awards, or acceptance letters to the best colleges, they didn't go away. They just went to another school. And well, they're back. And guess what? They're competing for the same job you want. If you're at a non-target school and at the top of your class, congratulations. But now forget about where you stand versus your school. The question is, where do you stand next to those same kids who beat you in high school? Did you work harder than they did in the last few years? Do you want it more than they do now? Do you have the heart they have, and can you prove it? Because Wall Street recruiters need you to. Here's the thing about great students. Like great athletes, they're relentless. They put in the work and the time to be great. They've been doing it for years and charging along at full speed from the moment you went in different directions. And now that we're closer to the finish line, just like in high school, remember who always did the extra credit? The kids that didn't need to, the kids who already had the highest grades. Do you think those kids are going to slow down? Those students are picking up speed. They're taking higher level classes. They're getting help with their resumes and cover letters. They're pushing forward to give themselves the best shot. It's in their DNA. It's who they are. I'm not telling you this to discourage you. I'm telling you because I want you to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. What is your edge? Do you have a plan? Are you getting caught up in the minute details of what questions might be asked in the interview? I don't want you to be worried about whether you have a knife or a sharp stick. In this case, it's not going to matter because behind that door, there's a gun battle. So listen carefully. This is what I want you to do. Start thinking about a new plan, a plan that's going to help you find a different door. Let's start by taking a look at this graph. The difference between the perceived value of a top school and hundreds of other schools in the eyes of the people you're asking for a job is enormous. I'm not going to lie to you. You're asking people who went to an elite school to believe that you can work side by side with them. That's a big hurdle. Why? Science has proven that people choose to be around people that are like themselves. Elite people want to be around, well, elite people. At the interview level, you're trying to break that at a subconscious level. Good luck. But if you can get over the wall, years later, the gap narrows because you've had a chance to prove yourself. Everything you're trying to prove now, GPA, school, internships, goes away. And what becomes the standard transforms to competency, clientele, and revenue generation. Next, here are the top 10 schools representing Morgan Stanley's 2016 New York Analyst Class. And here are the top 10 schools representing Goldman Sachs' 2016 Analyst Class. You see University of Chicago, Cornell, Columbia, MIT, University of Pennsylvania, Yale, Rutgers, Dartmouth. Wait, what? Rutgers? No offense to Rutgers, but this is an incredible chart for the fact that Rutgers is on the chart. What does that tell you? For one, Goldman Sachs values good students no matter where they come from, but they have to find them. It also tells you something else. My second thought was, I bet there's someone at Goldman with a lot of power who is a Rutgers alumnus. My curiosity led me to search Goldman Sachs executive, Rutgers University. And lo and behold, CFO Harvey Schwartz is a Rutgers alumnus. At the top investment banks, alumni teams help in the recruiting process. Some do it better than others. But regardless, when the CFO of Goldman Sachs champions for more Rutgers students within Goldman Sachs, guess what happens? More Rutgers students pop up at Goldman Sachs. Wait, let's check Morgan Stanley's list again and play a game of which one of these doesn't belong. University of Pennsylvania, NYU, Harvard, Yale, Baruch. Seems like an odd pairing. Again, not saying anything about the caliber of Baruch students, just pointing out that it's an outlier. And more importantly, I want you to be curious about the why. Why is Baruch a feeder school to Morgan Stanley? Well, there are about 500 alumni from Baruch at Morgan Stanley, which creates a collective voice within the firm that's very powerful. So identify the banks that have alumni working there. 1, it proves to the banks that people from your school can achieve success once through their doors. And 2, you may be able to find someone at the bank that'll take your resume or give you inside tips on their process. Put another way, if the bank you're applying to never hired someone from your school, then I would say the hurdle to get over the wall becomes even higher. Maybe that's not a place where you want to spend most of your time and energy. Which brings us to this map, where we have target schools, top banks, non-target schools, and boutique banks. We understand the connection between the top banks and the target schools, an investment in campus recruiting that's persisted for decades. Top banks absolutely want qualified non-target students as well, but the cost of expanding their on-campus efforts is way too much to find that diamond in the rough. And we understand that the boutique investment banks would also want the target school students, but their problem is threefold. 1, the target school students are mainly focused on the top investment banks. 2, their recruiting budget is very small relative to the top banks. And 3, the time it takes employees to recruit takes away time from producing revenue, which for a small firm may be significant. Essentially, we can call many of these boutique banks non-target banks. They have similar problems to quality kids at non-target schools. They're disadvantaged in the recruiting process. But what we do know is that they want to meet quality students. And while their standards could be higher than the banks, the numbers might be less daunting. Why would the standards be higher? The standards may be higher because they have less seats available, and so they can be pickier from the available talent pool. On the flip side, the available talent pool is much smaller than the top banks, which gives you a better chance to get the interview. Remember, a whole new game with a new set of rules begins after getting over the wall. Your goal is to get in. Try for whatever bank you want, but be honest with yourself in order to spend your time and energy wisely. As you execute your plan, Focus on where your chances are the greatest. And I can't stress it enough. Getting in front of people dramatically increases those chances because that's where you truly shine and show your passion. Banks aren't making final decisions from a piece of paper. They need to see you. You have a greater chance of that happening by focusing on the boutique investment banks. Research these employers. Focus on which of them interests you the most. Come up with reasons why. And then pour your energy on getting in front of them with your story. Many of them will be delighted to hear from you. And notice I said story. The story is comprised of the resume, cover letter, and interview. All three have to match, and they have to tell the same story. You are, in essence, a brand that you are asking a corporation to buy into. Make sure your brand is cohesive, and make sure your story is worth the time to listen to. Otherwise, you're boring. Don't try to position yourself as something you're not. It's usually blatantly obvious. At 200 to 1 odds, your best chance is to simply be yourself. And maybe that's more important now than ever. Listen to this. Over the last few years, there's been a quiet crisis creeping up within the investment banks and hedge fund community. There is a lack of talent. Young people are leaving the business or simply not applying. They're heading to other careers that include consulting and Silicon Valley startups. Surely not Harvard students, right? Harvard Business School graduates are some of the most sought after new hires in the world. They're among the top choices for companies in just about every industry, including Wall Street investment banks. It turns out, however, many of them are no longer interested in that industry. Only 4% of the 2015 graduating class said they wanted to work at an investment bank. 4% is not so encouraging. And even if they come into the industry, the idea of a long-term career at one firm is very rare these days. Younger employees are showing a greater propensity to change firms faster and more frequently. Here's the chairman of JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon. One of the biggest expenses for companies is hiring people, particularly hiring the wrong people. So if you end up with great, talented people who end up being permanent, full-time here, it pays off as an investment. The greatest cost to the bank are its people. The hope is that a productive culture is organically built, creating an environment ripe for generating extraordinary amounts of revenue as a return for their initial investment, which includes all the recruiting costs and then all the training costs over several early years. People leaving and not showing up is causing serious problems within the industry. The obvious is retaining talent in the industry where people are the greatest asset. The second is keeping intact a culture that's been developed over many years. And the third is the loss of or lack of return on their initial investment. This cycle has repeated for ages, until now. The cycle is at risk as the new generation of talent leaves before the investments can be recouped, or worse, they don't show up at all. It's difficult to place a hard value on the culture of a firm, but Goldman Sachs' recent decision to change its process for recruiting junior people speaks volumes for how valuable they think it is. The bank has concluded that helping to widen the pool of candidates beyond those from elite schools like Harvard University and Yale University will enable it to find students loyal to the industry. So it is making changes in the way it interviews and assesses candidates for summer analyst roles, typically the first-rung jobs for a banking career. And what are those changes? The article continues. Goldman recruiters will no longer conduct first-round interviews for summer positions on campus at elite schools like Harvard, Yale, and Stanford University. Instead, all candidates for summer analyst positions must complete a video interview. Shifting to video screening allows the firm to cast its net wider and brings it a step toward leveling the playing field for recruits from non-elite schools, says Edith Cooper, Global Head of Human Capital Management at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is seeking loyalty because in the end, there is nothing more important than the preservation of their culture, which makes loyalty extraordinarily valuable. Other banks will follow. So, for every target school student, this is a wake up call. Your edge of being at an elite school is about to take a major hit. The playing field will begin to level out, the standard will rise again, and the competition will increase. There's a paradigm shift happening. The focus is moving away from what school you attended to who you are as a person. Passion, loyalty, and commitment are imperative. And one top bank has finally made finding these qualities their mission. Now, for every non target school student, this is the opportunity you've hoped for. Technology has caught up and is changing the game. Banks can now reach beyond the boundaries set up by economic limitations. What that means is finding you just got easier. But don't think for a second that Goldman Sachs is lowering their standard. No way. It simply means they found a better formula for success. And they're now willing to go wherever that search leads them. Make no mistake about it. This is an enormous change, a watershed moment. Goldman Sachs has fired the first shot. It's your move.